You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney prior to and during questioning. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. You understand your rights? Warning. Each episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, will contain descriptions of acts of violence or of a sexual nature and are for people that are 18 years or older. Heed my warning, people. I do not get the facts of these cases off the internet or from some television show. These facts I'm retelling were presented to me by the victims of the crime or the perpetrators who committed the crimes. My descriptions of the crime scenes are what I saw with my own two eyes. If you are going to get offended, turn this podcast off now. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Woody Overton, and
Jim, the Hitman Rathman, is what he likes to call me.
Y'all, we're on the private patron page so y'all can have some more access, bonus content for your patron members, because we couldn't have run this investigation without you. But everybody else, you'll get to hear this tonight when it drops. And we are in person together.
Mm-hmm. Which is nice.
It is always nice, right?
A lot more of that to come in the future, though.
Right. That's right. We're just getting started, baby. But I'll turn that off. So y'all were we're unscripted. We're raw. How can they be posting on there? They shouldn't be able to post. I don't think so. Hey, are y'all on the, Michelle, y'all on the patron page? Are we on the right page? I guess so. You hit the link? Okay. All right. So anyway, I guess people can make posts on it, but it doesn't matter. You're all patron members, but everybody, we're doing a hotline episode, means where we're going to answer your questions to the best of our ability on Courtney's case. And there's a lot of them. So, but we can't answer
hundreds.
We can't answer everything naturally because of the sensitivity of the investigation. Jim, what do we want to say about where we're at now? What do you think we can say?
What I'll say is that we've gotten some very good information that we've been working around the clock on. So when we said it was hot a few weeks ago, it's a full inferno at this point.
It's nuclear.
But we're just going to keep pressing on because there's still a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of ground to cover. Still a lot of following up to do as well. I probably could work straight through for the next 72 hours on everything that I have without sleep. And I still don't think I would be caught up with it. But that's okay because that's what it takes. And we're dedicated and that's what we do.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you.
But it's hot.
Give you an example. Jim and I, and now Detective Bradley, were calling each other at all hours of the night. Jim was actually talking to a person, or has been, many people, right?
Many.
Coming in off the tip line, right?
Many.
So we're talking to many different people, but I'll just preface it with this, how investigations roll and they're fluid real time. He calls me the other night. I'd just gotten home, hadn't been home in forever, thought I was going to spend the night at home with my wife and kids. No. And Jim calls me.
Love you, Cindy, but no.
Jim calls at like 6 something. My wife is just cooking dinner and she comes in the room. She heard me on the phone and she looked at me. She said, "You got to go." I said, "Yep." So I loaded up and went back to Alexandria in the middle of the night to get some juice. And I mean, it's, y'all.
It's the way it goes sometimes, though. You don't know when certain information is going to come in or when you're going to find it, but when you have it, you got to jump on it. It's not something you can wait because you may not get that opportunity again. So luckily, Woody, being as awesome as he is, had no problem taking off and doing what he had to do, and he ended up pulling an all-nighter because of it.
That's right. That's right. We all ended up pulling.
He was cross-eyed by the next night, but hey, it's the way it went.
But here's the deal: as far as the investigation goes, I don't want to say too much because we're at a really, really critical point right now. But I'm telling you, 1,000%, it is nuclear. It is on fire. You bad guys and girls.
Sugar is fixing to turn to shit.
Sugar's turning to shit, or you're fucked. Pardon my French, but you're fucked. And we're coming for you, and you're going to know it real soon. So we can't say much more other than that.
No, it's still got a lot of groundwork to do, but it's moving in the right direction.
A lot of groundwork to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know who you are, and we know who you are, and we're coming. But when we come, we're going to come correct, and you're not going to be able to get out of it. So that's it. But that, by no means, lifers, do not stop calling in your tips.
No, I still need more info.
Everything else, you can never have too much info. Mm-hmm. And guess what? We still have to follow our other leads down, no matter what they are, and they come in.
I was following them up since 6 this morning. Got here, and I was on the phone the entire drive, just returning phone calls and getting new leads and new information and connecting dots. So that's what we do. We cross T's, we dot I's, and we make sure our stuff is airtight.
Right. And let me tell you this: if there were arrests made today in this case, we still wouldn't stop.
Mm-mm.
Okay. No matter if arrests get made right now, we're still not going to stop. We're not going to get off of it until we see it through.
That's right.
Period. And then by see it through, I mean son of a bitch standing in court, and we get a guilty verdict.
We have one question on here. Should we start off with this one?
Okay.
It's from Marlene. Good. So the question is what led each of you to your careers in law enforcement?
All right. I always wanted to be a cop, and I never wanted to be anything else. And dreamed of it, I guess, since I was a little boy. So, yeah.
I'm an adrenaline junkie. So for me, when I got an opportunity, one, I love helping people, but then when you can go from completely calm and quiet, and then all of a sudden you're just adrenaline is through the roof because the situation just got really hot. I get addicted to those kind of things. I also get addicted to investigations and the high that comes with it. So, I love that. It just gives me that adrenaline. It makes me feel good knowing I'm helping somebody out and I'm working really hard to make it happen, but I'm getting that adrenaline spike all at the same time. So it's kind of a perfect recipe for me. But I love it. I wouldn't want to do anything else.
Well, yeah. Part of me wanting to be a cop is I didn't want to sit behind the same desk every day and do the same, punch the same clock, do the same thing over and over again. And law enforcement is the greatest show on earth. So many days when I get off in the morning, I feel like I should have to pay them for getting to work there. And the old saying, famous saying is, what is it? Men who have hunted armed men long enough soon care for little else. And that's paraphrase for Ernest Hemingway. So
look at you, 28.
Yeah.
By the way, Sarah, I did see your question come across about how to be found on Pandora. We'll have somebody send you that information. We'll PM you for that. So
what I want to do, y'all, and Jim, you can read some of those in between here, but I have 100 and something questions we had already, people had submitted. So the lifers and patron members. So let me read a couple of them. Let's just start.
So I'll finish these two here, and these will be the last two, which is just Laura and Julie. Laura, Woody and I have an idea, a really good idea, but that's nothing that we can release right now. It would be way too sensitive to do so.
What's the question?
The question was, do we know who did it or suspect who did it? And,
can't tell you that
we just can't tell you that right now. I mean, until you confirm it, there's no way to to really be able to be concrete on it. But when we go that direction, you all are going to know.
It's been 15 years, and we don't want to do anything to ruin it right now.
The other question was from Julie, which had to do with have the police, did they question everybody involved? Did they basically do their due diligence on their job?
Okay, well, let's that one's in here also, so
Okay.
I'll answer
Perfect.
as we go.
So we're going to answer the questions that have been submitted. So
And then once we get through here, if y'all have some more questions,
absolutely.
we have time, we'll certainly do it. First one is Andre Davis Johnson. He says, not necessarily a question, but putting my wish out in the universe, hoping to see Woody, Jim, Detective Rabelais, and Courtney's amazing family on a panel discussing how they solved Who Killed Courtney Coco Crime Con in Orlando in May of 2020.
I would love that.
That would be,
It'd be a dream come true
to
for
be able
all
to
of
discuss
us.
it, period. But we're going to be at Crime Con regardless. And hopefully we'll be headlining on a panel to do that, because it certainly would be worthy. And there's so many people backed up that one. Becky Andre, Amber Salad, Kimberly, Cindy Grady, a bunch of people all say they hope that was what happens. But
And so do we.
Melanie Moore asked a question, Jim. Says, is there someone higher up, Attorney General, state rep, etc., that Detective Green's handling of the case can be reported to? Well, everybody has somebody they have to answer to eventually, even law enforcement members. And whether it's Detective Green or anybody else that's in official capacity, and something is found out, which I believe dirty laundry will come out in the end of this, then they're going to have to answer to the powers that be. So it is, if you're local law enforcement, you could be answering to the state police. If you're state police, you could be answering to the feds, or a combination thereof. The feds have to answer to other feds. So they're going to know whoever's dirty or bad. They're going to know, and they're going to have to answer for it. So
it's all going to come out in the wash.
Yeah, and you can bet that the murder is the first thing.
It's just the way it goes.
The murderers, the first thing they're going to do is flip on
someone else and get less of time.
If it's a dirty law enforcement.
It's basically the only play they have is to at that point is to flip on others and hope you can get a lighter sentence.
Okay, Elizabeth P. Chalker.
She's awesome, by the way. Hey, Elizabeth.
She says, does APD still have the evidence from Courtney's house, and has it been tested yet? Yeah. Well, I'm going to honestly tell you that we don't know if they have the evidence yet. I'd be very shocked if they do, but if they do, that'd be great. I can tell you for sure it hasn't been tested.
Yeah.
Because it's still a homicide for Chambers County Sheriff's Office out of Texas. And we know for a fact that APD told Detective Green specifically, told Detective Rabelais, who was the lead homicide investigator on the case, that there was no evidence taken from Courtney's house. And certainly if you don't take any evidence, you can't test it, right? So none of that stuff that was taken that we provided y'all the list with before has been tested.
Right.
And Elizabeth says, for the 4 a.m. calls made with Courtney's phone, can you determine who had those numbers 15 years ago? Jim, that's your department.
It takes some work. I need a little bit of assistance on that. There's some information is still good and accurate in regards to her phone, but those 4:00 a.m. calls, that's just going to, hopefully be a power of subpoena here soon enough to be able to get that access. Right. Definitely that or some serious digging.
Those records don't ever go away.
It's been 15 years.
Yeah.
You just don't know what kind of system they had to back it up. It's not like today where you have an iCloud or you have other means of being able to back up mass amounts of storage. Then it was different. A lot of those records were kept maybe a PDF file, and it's just stored into a massive database. Some of it's printed out. You don't really know. So it just takes time to get to that. But unfortunately, a lot of people back then used what's known as burner phones,
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and talk about that. Basically, they'd go and buy a prepaid phone, and then whenever you get caught or someone's getting too close to you, it'll take the phone, you throw it out, and you go get another one.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's what a lot of those phones back then were used for, burner phones for that.
Okay, so Christian Drup says the mom mentioned they had the names of the people who were called, confusing why such obvious leads were never followed up on. I assume Woody and Jim are actively investigating those people now. Christian, you're absolutely correct.
100,000%. We do not miss anything. We will talk to everyone we are allowed to have access to, period.
Right.
Everything.
Next question is Elizabeth again.
She's got a lot in there.
Yep. Yeah, I skipped a couple.
Maybe you missed your call. Maybe Elizabeth should have been a detective too, because her questions are pretty good.
Yeah. Who was at the domino party? Have they all been interviewed by Woody or Jim or any law enforcement? Well,
it's very sensitive.
Yeah.
A very sensitive question, because that's one of the links to one of her last days alive. So,
her last
hours alive. Yeah. So that's pretty sensitive to the current and ongoing investigation. So,
okay. Y'all told you we'll answer them if we can, but we're not going to do anything to jeopardize the investigation. Julia Gaudet Spielman says, were they able to do a rape kit for DNA? I can tell you that they did what's called a SANE kit, a sexual assault. No, SANE is for the nurse. The rape kit, whatever the official term is for it, it was done and nothing was recovered. Okay. I can tell you that for a fact. That's in the autopsy. So, Elizabeth says, is Cedric Green originally from Alexandria area? I believe so.
I assume so.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Skip over a couple of these.
Here's a question from Julie James on here. I'm going to answer this real quick while you look. The question is it also seems like the people who were found in their car could have given tons of info. Were they interrogated? So that would be a good question for Detective Rabelais. He's not with us.
I can actually answer it.
Yeah, go for it.
They arrested those people in the car and basically the hood or the barrio in Houston, and they had Courtney's car as what we call a crack loaner, and the meaning that people will go in stolen vehicles like that, and to get rid of them, they'll drop them in the hood and leave the keys in the car. And that the first person gets it, and they'll take it to a drug dealer and say, give me 5 rocks and you can have this car.
You can have the car for a week.
And that is such a great way to destroy evidence, and get the wrong people. But the people that were arrested in the car absolutely have nothing to do with Courtney's murder other than they were found in her car. Okay. And that they had some time, and that car, I'm sure, passed through many hands in the hood.
Yep. Detective Rabelais handled that, and he did a tremendous job with it. Maybe we can ask him later on to speak to that further if needed. But he did an outstanding job on that years ago.
Yeah, Detective Rabelais is a bomb.
He is pretty damn good.
Another question from Spielman said, it was rumored at one time that Courtney was an informant for APD. Any truth to this? If yes, this could have led to her murder. Absolutely no truth to that. Zero, Julia. She was never an informant for APD, period.
Correct.
Is it a common practice for law enforcement to slander victims amongst themselves the way Green spoke to Rabelais about Courtney? And if not, what could be his reason for calling her a crackhead to Rabelais? Wow.
You want this one? You want me to get it?
I mean, you could start it.
So, a lot of times in law enforcement, they just speak what they believe it could be or whatever. I think, I can tell you that Woody and I, we try to handle things a lot differently than that, try to keep everything professional. I don't understand why. he would turn around and make that comment to Detective Rabelais, maybe to, I don't know, obviously to, from what we can gather at this point, it may be just to discourage him from continuing to investigate as if her life didn't matter. That's the only weird thing that I can think of, just because that's just not how you should handle it. You have a deceased person, you have a family that's suffering, and at the end of the day, you got to handle that with respect and care. Regardless of history, whether somebody was or was not involved with drugs or whatever their life choices were, it doesn't really make a difference. It's still a human being. It's still somebody's family member. It's still somebody that's loved.
Crackhead,
so,
which isn't true, by the way.
It wasn't true, and it's disrespectful, and another shame on you.
Calls. Been sitting in the detective's office, get a call from another agency saying, one that comes to mind. They said that an anhydrous ammonia plant had blown up in Washington, Paris. They were stealing ammonia for meth, and they got a plate leaving the scene, and it came back to one of our girls, and she was a frequent flyer. She was a meth head one year, but I didn't say, well, she's a meth head, I did say, yeah, we know her, and what happened. They said that, and I said, okay, but I didn't slander. Well, why? I don't know why the hell you do that.
It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, human being. So I don't know, but, let's see if I can read this one. Okay. Penny T. Smith says, okay, once Woody and Jim and Rabelais have finished their investigation and have exhausted all avenues, how are you guys going to obtain evidence from APD to be tested for DNA since you guys are no longer law enforcement? Because I assume that the DNA will play a large role in solving this. Just ask them because of the chain of custody. It could not be released to y'all because you're no longer police. Am I right? And also, will another agency step in to make arrests if by chance law enforcement is connected to her murder? Okay. You are 1,000,000% correct, Penny, that when we are not law enforcement any longer.
Which sucks.
Yeah.
Right now, I wish I was.
Excuse me. But and so we personally will not be getting any evidence to send to DNA labs, et cetera. But I can promise you this. When it reaches that point in the investigation, another agency will be stepping in. And I'm not telling you that it hadn't already reached that point, but when it reaches that point, another agency will be stepping in to do their due diligence. We're going to take it as far as we can take it and certainly turn over anything to the proper authorities to move the investigation forward. And, yes, I would, well, I can't say yes. And I want to assume that another agency will step in. I can tell you this. We're not giving our information to APD.
No, definitely not.
If we're going to give it to someone, it's going to be to a higher.
It's going to be to a higher authority.
Higher authority that we know
that has the money and has the means to be able to investigate what needs to be investigated.
The experience, the integrity.
Yep.
So it won't be any question about somebody's trying to cover for somebody they worked with or anything like that.
Yeah, sure.
And they may go back down and get APD to work with them, et cetera. Who knows? But you better believe we're not putting all this work in so somebody that doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't have the integrity to close this investigation out will do it.
We have enough law enforcement connections out there to where we can hand deliver a package.
Absolutely.
And feel comfortable and confident that it'll be followed up on and it'll be worked from that point on. So we're not stupid. We're not going to deliver it.
Just like in our careers, we're not going to deliver junk.
Nope.
Right? It's going to be on a silver platter. And then certainly they're going to have to, accept it, follow up on things and do what they do. And Penny, thank you for that. Cause I told you here, I will personally answer this question on Friday. So thanks.
Good job, Woodrow.
Okay. Tina Nally Pennington says, how did her car get to Winnie and when and how was it found? Well,
it's a little.
Tina, somebody drove it there, but no, we're not trying to make light of it. perpetrator or perpetrators drove the vehicle there, and they dumped Courtney and Winnie. And the car was found sometime later, and people were arrested in it in Houston, Texas.
That's about all we can really say about that right now.
And Chris Strupp says, yeah, where was the car found? It was found in Houston. Yeah, y'all, that information is on that private patron page. And we've scanned that in, so if you want to go over there and look at it. Right?
I think Detective Rabley say 5th Ward of Houston, which is pretty bad area, or really rough, if you will.
All right. Sarah Craig says, can Louisiana State Police or the DA take control if y'all can't get the evidence? Absolutely. And we're counting on it. Right?
Well, absolutely. If we, once we cross the T's, dot the I's, and hand deliver a nice package to them, hopefully it's enough for them to be able to go from there, if that's where the direction we go at that time.
Right. And y'all, we're not telling you that we hadn't already done these things already. We're just telling you we can't say. So Ray N is the middle initial, last name Nikki, says, I have a comment, and I have to say it's because it is really bothering me, ! I don't know why they are trying to make Coco out to be some drug head, because all capitals, she definitely was not. The overdose assumption is pure bullshit. She was definitely not a dope head. I know that for a fact. Now, on the other hand, some of the people she chose to surround herself with during the end of her life were not good people. And yes, many of them, sorry, somebody's beeping in. Yes, many of them were on drugs or sold them. Coco was an amazingly sweet soul. I wish she never would have got involved with the wrong crowd. Hashtag justice for Coco. Go ahead, John.
No, you don't.
Hey, Ray, Nikki, I totally agree with you. And I know she was wrong around the wrong people. But she was an amazing person, y'all. And
she was a 19-year-old girl.
Yeah.
I mean, she had a lot of life to live.
I mean, when I was 19, I wasn't making the best decisions either, right? And so that doesn't give someone a right to murder someone. But I'm going to tell you something. She's not a crackhead or full-blown dope head or whatever. She is a daughter, a cousin, a niece, and a friend. And I heard one of the family members told me she just didn't judge people. She just loved everybody she met, and following in with the wrong crowd. And certainly,
I think everybody in their teenage years, or even in their, very beginning of the early 20s, everybody at some point or another encounters the wrong crowd of people. She unfortunately was around the wrong crowd of people for a short time, but she was a beautiful 19-year-old girl. And as far as the overdose thing is concerned, I don't know many overdoses where a body ends up across the state line. It makes no sense at all.
And nude from the waist down with the legs.
Yeah, exactly.
And the next question is from Jessica Herring, and she says, she's answering Ray Nikki, says, every time I hear the OD story, I think to myself, well, who gives a shit if she did it or didn't? It's still a homicide, according to the coroner. And Jessica Herring, you're right on time, sweetie. Right on time. It is a homicide investigation, period. You got any questions you want to read while I read this next one?
I don't see any on here right now. I mean, if I scroll up, it would be.
All right. So Heather Poplai says, Jessica, I think the exact same thing, girl. I'm like, why are we even talking about it? Who cares if she was? I realize to the family and friends, it does matter because of her memory. But for the investigation, I just don't even know why it matters. Is a crackhead's life less important than anyone else's? Also, I've known some crackheads and they did not hold a job, have their own home, or host any kind of Domino's night at their house. They are more of the couch surfing type, negative bank balance, in and out of custody, etc. The story we have doesn't fit that dopehead profile. I'll never believe that about her.
At the end of the day, toxicology screens, no toxicology screens, what if she was or was not involved with drugs. At the end of the day, the coroner determined it was a homicide, and that's exactly what it is. And that's how we're moving forward.
That's it.
Period.
Yeah. And I'm definitely not a crackhead. Melanie Moore says, all these years later, is it possible to find out where the phone was when those 4 a.m. calls were made? If the person interested reportedly had it and it pings towers in Texas or on the way to Texas, that should be significant. Melanie Moore, you're correct. I would like to say 100% certain that they could still go back and pull that information.
If they still have the information, then yeah, we can still figure it out. We can still triangulate it.
Sometimes stuff gets lost, y'all. And while we're talking about this today, I know of a certain law enforcement agency that has no 911 calls, I think since before 2014, because the system blew up or something. I don't know. So sometimes those things happen, but I doubt that. It's a major company. So, and you better believe it's going to be looked at.
One of the questions on here has to do with, is APD helping us out at this time? APD had an opportunity to speak with us already and chose not to return the call.
Actually, they said they were going to meet.
Well, they said they were going to meet
times,
and they never did.
It kept getting delayed, and we never even got a call back, other than one text.
To answer your question on that, nope. And as far as your second question in regards to have we spoken to Green? No, I haven't. I don't think he would talk to us anyway.
Yeah.
And honestly, at the way he's botched this investigation, I don't even want his name coming out of my mouth because I don't. Yeah. I don't have any respect for that. I'm sorry.
To say to him.
Suck at life. It is what it is.
I wouldn't ask him a question if he was standing in front of me. He's got nothing for him. So how old, this is from Allie Blackman, how old was that friend's child, and would it be possible to talk to them and see if they remember anything? Why were the check, well, let's answer that first. It's possible. Allie actually had a 4-year-old pick out her mother's murderer out of what we call a 6-pack on a lineup in one of the cases. And Jim, I think you know which one I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And so, but after 15 years, I don't know, but I'm sure that'll be handled. And the second part is, why was the checks being used not looked into further? And is it possible to do so? The checks, y'all, if you don't know about it and you hadn't seen it in the patron page, because we hadn't discussed it, I think about a year after Courtney's murder, some checks were written off her account in Houston to pay some electricity bills. And unfortunately, the electricity company just wrote it off because it's cheaper. I think it was $600 or something like that.
It's cheaper to write it off than to go through litigation on it.
The bank wrote it off and then to try to dig into it. But certainly Detective Rabelais and them looked into it, and nothing there. The people, those people had nothing to do with the direct murder of Courtney. Now, you remember her car was in the hood in that area of Texas for like a week. So, all right. This is, I'm just going to read this because y'all put it out there. Penny Smith says, this is not a question, just a comment. I just have to say it. Excuse my language, but I want the sorry motherfucking murdering bastards that are so nervous right now because they know y'all are close to the answers and they are screwed because for 15 years they've been walking around and thinking they got away with it. I hope they're shitting themselves daily waiting for the ball to drop because it is.
Oh, I guarantee you they're feeling the heat.
love your statement.
I guarantee it.
Penny, love your statement.
Great statement, Penny. Spot on assessment.
That's the same thing I want to say, Penny. I'm trying not to curse so much now, but I want them to be afraid, just like you. I want them to finally, after 15 years, be looking over their shoulder, waiting for their door to get kicked in, waiting for the cuffs to go on. That I guess I'm angry. I just want retribution, and I want them to sweat, man. And they're not going to get away with it. Period.
Tori had a good question on here. It says, on the way to Texas, would the perps have a chance to stop for gas at some point, possibly caught on camera? I would assume yes at some point, but we're talking 15 years ago. So most of those back then either had a videotape that would record, or they had a digital recorder when they were first coming out, which would only record for probably about 15 to maybe 30 days before it re-recorded over itself. So it's an extremely small chance that anybody would have a tape back at that time. As far as I know, there hasn't been any tapes collected. Right. So, and you know,
it's
something we would have followed up on 15 years ago if we were on this case, without a doubt.
Sure. But and I drove that route, y'all, the last week from Detective Rabelais' house to Alexandria. You could probably make it on a tank of gas, but there's no way in hell there's going to be a videotape or anything after 15 years. We can't. I mean, we worked the murder in Popeyes, and the cameras didn't even work.
And that was as it happened.
Right. Most convenience stores cameras, even to this day, don't even work. And if they do work, they loop over after. The longest one I've seen is 29 days, and they automatically re-record over it. Even on the digital stuff, they don't have the space to store it.
Penny, we curse a lot too. So,
Candy Ducote, Pospisil. Candy asks, was the actual cause of death ever mentioned? And the Candy on the autopsy report, Mandy DICUS backs her up and says, right, I don't think I ever heard on the podcast what the coroner stated the cause of death was. My husband Googled it and said strangulation. Can you please give more details about the coroner's full report? Sure. I'm going to do that. It's also on the patron page with the full autopsy is on there. The cause of death is officially listed as a homicide, which means an illegal taking of Courtney's life. As far as being able to give the actual determination, couldn't do it. It's suspected it may have been asphyxiation, smothering. You can choke somebody to death without breaking the bone in the neck that's so sensitive. Her bone was not broken. So they were thinking that it was asphyxiation, but couldn't prove it 100%. She had been down. The decomposition on Courtney's body was pretty advanced, which is consistent with her being in the trunk, a hot trunk, for a couple of days. And so that, of course, hinders the autopsy to begin. That's all on the patron page. But it's still a homicide. That's all. Homicide, period. And Megan Hester Miller says, I don't understand how they couldn't know for sure if it was asphyxia. Thought that was the point of doing an autopsy. I'm not a coroner, obviously, but I work in the hospital and have known results to determine if someone died from suffocation versus aspiration, etc. Just curious because I feel totally invested. I do need to completely catch up with the last podcast. So
the difference is, though, between a hospital setting and this, and no disrespect, because I totally appreciate everything that you do in the hospital. Believe me, this body was a few days decomposed. So when that starts happening, you start losing the ability to be able to find out exactly what it was that had happened. Whereas in a hospital setting, usually it's within a short time frame that they came to you. Well, if they're transported or if they had already passed, it's usually, the body hasn't gone through that, been decomposed or anything like that.
And not only
That would be the only difference.
Is it not Courtney? It was several days, but the problem with that is it was made much, much worse because she was in the trunk of a car and it was still hot. Now, if it's hot outside, y'all know when you get in your car how hot it is inside the car. Well, it's much hotter than that inside of a trunk. And so that's why when Detective Bradley arrived on the scene and he called Green and, you know, they found out that she had only been missing for 3 days. That almost didn't fit because, and this is going to be hard for the family to hear, but I mean, it is what it is. That because of the advanced state of decomposition and her body was further along
further advanced
for 3 days. It made it look like a week versus 3 days, or, you know, that's the best analogy I could give. So it really, really screws up the evidence in the autopsy. I mean, you're talking about maybe there should have been petechiae hemorrhaging, right? For strangulation, even if the neck bone wasn't broken after that far, being in the trunk and that kind of heat, you can't tell. But I mean, the pathologist that did it did a hell of a job. But he can only put down what he can see. So,
I mean, as a forensics pathologist, so.
All right. So Melissa Pomeroy, Melissa Pomeroy wants to know on a scale from 1 to 10, how happy is Jim in his relationship? And I said, Melissa Pomeroy, you are so silly and trouble. One of my favorite lifers that makes me smile. And she's always cutting up. And she answered me and says, sometimes pressure gets a bit much. Laughter can relieve some of the stress. And you're right, sweetie. But she follows it up with an actual question that says, also, how does the chain of custody work?
So, chain of custody. So there's multiple ways to do this, but typically, almost like we had tried to tell you guys before, when you're on a scene and let's just say you go with a body, right? And we put that body into a body bag. We photograph it. Once you put it in a body bag, you zip it up. Well, you're going to use
once you arrive on the scene,
right?
It's yours. You take the chain of custody starts there. Okay.
Right. It starts there. Well, you know, when you're going to document what time that body was in the bag, what time you took a photo of the seal, that it was sealed, what time that they left to go to the coroner's office. You know, everything is documented, and that's kind of the chain of custody. You really don't do anything with any of the evidence without documenting it. Like another example would be, in this particular case, and I'm just going to give it because it's just a fact of life. When they went to retest the blood, okay. If they got that through Texas state, their crime lab, they would have had to have pulled out whatever files they had, whatever information they had in regards to the blood work, and they would have had to fill out a form, maybe even take a picture of them actually doing it, documenting it. So let's just say there was 5 mLs worth of blood, and they took out 2.5 mLs. So they need to document exactly how much they took out, how much is still remaining, who took it out, what time they took it out, signed it, witnessed it. And that way, you constantly have that chain of custody, then this blood went from this location to to another location. That's all documented. And then it's the same way when it comes back to you. If let's just say blood's returned to that evidence collector, they need to do the same thing. I put it in another tube, whatever the case might be. That's what we mean by chain of custody. It's completely documented from start to finish.
And once you take a piece of evidence into your custody, whether you arrive on a scene and it's a body down and you visually are looking at it and say, okay, this is my scene. And you're the first link in the chain, mm-hmm. right? And then you send it in. Let's say I arrived on a scene and worked, and Jim and I are partners, and this happened on cases on state ground or the guy warmed the bottle up his ass.
Thanks for the visual.
Anyway, Jim went to those autopsies. I didn't, right? So when he takes it out, the body out, or they take it out at the autopsy, that's the next link in the chain. It has to be documented.
Correct.
And every time that piece of evidence moves from one person's hands, let's say they put it in the evidence locker, that's evidence locker technician is the next chain of custody. So it's a chain, and the chain can't be broken without it being documented, because the defense attorneys will have a field day.
Absolutely.
All right. Was the car returned here? Was the car returned here to Louisiana? And who is in possession of the car now? And if no one has the car, was DNA taken from the car and preserved so that it could be tested? The car was originally taken in possession and tested thoroughly at the Texas State Police Crime Lab in Houston. Miss Stephanie, the mom, didn't want the car back. And so after that, I mean, and I can't blame her, right? But her personal items were returned to the family in the car. I mean, I don't know if the bank took it back or they sold it.
I'm not sure what happened with that. It might even still be in state custody. Well, I don't know what they're going to do with it all these years. But.
Yeah, so it's not back in Louisiana.
Usually at some point it's released or it's crushed. It's really up to the family what they want to do with it.
Yeah, it was a pretty new car though. So maybe the bank got it back, sold it at auction, but that's all speculation. But so, Devin Dalzart says, Penny T. Smith, do you write all your questions down to remember them? I have so many questions while I'm listening, but I can't remember shit now. I get that, Devin. So, and Penny answers her. Anyways, Penny says, no, girl, I have a million more I can't remember. I have so many, but all these questions are awesome and can't wait to get as many answers as possible, because for investigative purposes, I know they will not be able to answer all of them.
Correct.
You're right. And thank y'all for the questions. They are awesome. And Jolie Spillman says, I feel you. I have 15 years of questions. And yeah, Jolie, the family does also, right? Michael Ferris Guy says, can the FBI take over this case because of police negligence and because it crosses state lines? They could. If we took the package to them and asked them to look into it, and that's something that they wanted to do, they absolutely could if they wanted to. They're the feds. And we're not telling y'all that we haven't done that already. Okay. So Kelly McComber says the same thing. This was my question too. Cross the state lines. Seems like it's been established, et cetera. And Casey Allgood follows that up about crossing state lines. All right. So let's see. Beverly Jimison Mooney says, I'm glad I waited. Y'all are all asking the same things I was going to ask in the podcast before the first one. Woody said something about someone else being a cold case that tied into this one possibly. Mm-hmm. They ran in the same group, etc. Anything become of that one? And will it help this case to be solved? That is a really good question. Really good question. Jim? So that particular case you're talking about has come up numerous times throughout this. I think there's some similarities and there's some links, but I'm going to go out and say that I believe that I don't think the two are actually connected. I can tell you this, Courtney, they were such close friends that Courtney had her obituary, the other lady's obituary, in the trunk of her car, cut out. There's newspapers back then, right? So, and they were like a month and a half between the deaths, and the other girl was dumped off the side. It was about 6 weeks at most between the two. And they were friends. Jim's had gotten information. We talked to people that saw them together and numerous places, et cetera. So there's always a possibility, but I think in this particular case, I just don't think that there's an actual
link. I'm not saying that 100% certainty that there isn't, but from what we've been able to gather at this point. But the information that has come in on the other case has been very interesting and documented very well. And that's something that we're going to keep an eye on as well. But we did get some good information on that. And
right. Yeah, absolutely.
We will get there.
Next one's Ray Nick says, I wish someone could or would organize something here local in Alexandria in remembrance of Coco. The turnout, I believe, would be tremendous and might give this more coverage. Just a thought. I'm stuck in the hospital at the moment, 36 weeks pregnant with blood pressure issues, bedbound. So I have been reading all day and trying to think of ways to honor Coco and her amazing family and make sure the word gets out to locals. Woody and Jim Rappin RLC are doing fantastic work. Can't wait to wear my pink for Coco Friday. Okay. Well, first of all, Ray, we certainly wish you good health and, with the pregnancy and everything. Right. And they just had a vigil for, I think it's called the National Day of Remembrance, et cetera, like 2 weeks ago when I was in Alexandria. And Courtney's mom actually organizes the whole thing. But I'm hoping that one day soon we'll get, we'll be able to do something. How should I say it? Something, you know what? I'm hoping this case is going to be solved one day soon, and then we'll certainly do something big.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And you better believe there'll be coverage, but, anyway, thanks for saying we're doing a good job. We appreciate you. And Jim's wearing his pink and I'm wearing my red.
That's right.
And a lot of lifers posted that today, y'all, and we appreciate that y'all wearing it for Courtney. All right. That's another question. Well, I need to read this. Karen Lieber says, the timeline is my main confusion. I want much more info about those 4 a.m. calls. What proof do we have that the PO, the person of interest, really made those calls except the unreliable word of Detective Green? Can we get info on the location? Can we find out whose numbers were called? Do we think the person of interest and Courtney were together at 4 a.m.? Was the phone found in Courtney's house? How can you get a DNA test at cigarette butts, beer cans, dominoes, et cetera, assuming they still have them without links to the PD? I think we're pretty much already covered all that, y'all. The phone, you're right. Detective Green is the one that said the person of interest had the phone. So, other than that, I'm sure they're going to be looking into it. And the DNA stuff, if I don't want to say that because somebody go put dominoes and cigarette butts or whatever in Dr. Pepper cans in the evidence now, but if that stuff is there, I'd be a fucking monkey's uncle. I'm just going to say that after 15 years, if you don't tell the lead detective on the case that you have it, then I don't see why in the hell you turn in evidence. I pray it's there. I really do. I pray they took a videotape of that crime scene when they worked it. And I pray that's there. And I pray that anybody that had ill will or negligence or whatever you want to call it that doesn't have access to destroy it. But we've gotten some information that is probably otherwise.
Absolutely.
But somebody's going to have to answer.
We got some juice, yo. Yeah. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Tori writes on here, if we could get Google on board, would you consider selling your voice? Well, Tori, I'm so glad that you mentioned that about my voice today. Just kidding. What, did you sell your voice to Google?
I don't know. I'm going to keep it on. Like the Siri type thing.
It'd be great if you were on like a GPS and you pass your turn. Your sugar's turning to shit.
That's funny.
Turn around.
That's funny. They ran like a little bitch. Huh? Well, I'll sell my voice to Google if Jim does a workout video, and we can split the profits.
There you go. That's right. Great.
Great question. Thank you, sweetie. All right. Whatever
I agree, Julie.
I got to answer. I'm not going to answer that one.
Green doesn't deserve to be called a detective. Spot on. I think the only thing he's ever solved is where's Waldo on a Life cereal box. 'Cause he sure doesn't know what the hell he's doing in this one.
Yeah. A lot of these, y'all, are I'm scrolling through, I'm reading them for the first time, and it's the same things we've already answered. About how we'll push it forward if green's dirty and stuff like that. And of course, we're not saying he is or he isn't, but whatever. We're not giving our work up to somebody that's not going to do the job. How about I answer it like that? Some of these I just can't answer.
Some of them are sensitive in nature, so it's not that trust me, at some point we'd love to be able to answer everything. But right now there's a lot of information, a lot of questions that have come in that are just super sensitive. So you guys are thinking on the right path, but
one day we will
confirm it.
Be able to answer everything. And
Amy, those questions are good, but they're pretty close.
Okay. This one says, it was mentioned there was no trauma to the victim's body. This means she was not sexually assaulted despite the lack of clothing, position of legs. No evidence. You're right. No evidence of her being sexually assaulted. The lack of clothing and position of legs. There's a couple of different theories on that. Mm-hmm. And from degrading her for shock value to hurt the family, which certainly it does every day, to leaving messages to other people or whatever, but can't really speculate it. But I can tell you that the autopsy says she was not sexually assaulted. Avery Thiel says, is Cedric Green now APD's deputy chief? If he is, Lord have mercy. I agree, Avery.
Yeah, we agree. We won't speak to his current position.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. Angela Stroud, since her case is opened back up, who is handling it? Is it still with APD only, or has RPSO officially taken it over? All I can tell you about those two, Angel, is that we know on RPSO website her case was taken from being listed as cold to active current investigation. So I would assume that RPSO is doing something since they moved to that position. But I can tell you that they're not, well, I can't tell you that.
At the end of the day, there's 3 people working on it. Woody, myself, and Detective Rabelais. That you can guarantee. Anything outside of that? No clue.
Yeah.
Except for what we do with it.
And we can't tell you about that. So, when is Friday? When Friday is the hotline episode? Elizabeth would be as soon as I can get home and get my wife to put it on the Lipson. And great, blah, blah, blah. All right, Melissa Love, Woody and Jim, what advice would you give a young person aspiring to be in law enforcement during this time of distrust against law enforcement officers? Shit.
It's a good question. I think if you believe in something and you have it in your heart, you go for it. And, you go into it with the idea of being able to help your community. I mean, that's what people get into this for. Maybe you have a tremendous idea and a tremendous way to connect the community together. Because that's what it's all about. I think there's a distrust, but the distrust comes from misinformation. And, I just think it's critically important, and I'll just speak to that. I just think it's critically important that law enforcement goes to those areas that are underprivileged, so to speak, and build relationships. You don't have to go in there to arrest people, but you can most certainly go in there and talk to people. They're still human beings. And I think you build the trust that way. And that's what it's all about. It's community-oriented policing.
That's how we used to do it. Mm-hmm. We knew. I would get out. I'm talking about in uniform patrol, and then the detectives also. But I would get out in certain problem areas and literally get out. If they had a bonfire going, hanging around the trash barrel, I'd get out and go hang out and talk.
Absolutely.
To them. They knew that I wasn't going to do. Now, I probably arrested half of them. Sometimes when you get out to go walk up, half of them take off running. and that's okay too. But they knew I wasn't going to harass them for no reason.
There's two. I'll keep it short. To answer your question, finalize it. If you believe it in your heart and you feel that it's something you want to do, you absolutely go for it and you fulfill those dreams and you come up with a way to inspire others to do what you do and find that missing link and bring the community together. Two stories real quick on what I was talking about earlier. When it comes to, policing up your community, but treating people fairly and right. I used to patrol in a really bad area and I would go in there and, I would always, I don't know, I like to eat, so it is what it is. But I knew if I was going to go through there, I knew this one guy was always working outside and he was always busting his butt. So I used to bring cheeseburgers. And I would literally just pull up and he and I would eat a cheeseburger too and just talk. We didn't talk anything at all about my job whatsoever or his. We just had conversations. Right. And every time I went rolling through there, he'd wave to me, I'd wave to him, I'd say hello, and we built a relationship. Well, sure enough, one day there was a really bad crime that happened. Who do you think gave me the information? Because he trusted me.
That's right.
Where you don't typically get information in there, but he believed in me. He knew I would do it right, and I did. And that's what it's all about. Another guy that I dealt with all the time would always run from other law enforcement. He probably ran from you sometime or another. He always owed back child support. And it wasn't that he didn't make the efforts. He had to work jobs for cash. He would pay what he could. So if he owed $500 but could only pay $300, he'd pay his $300. But now he's $200 on the hole. And so eventually a warrant would get cut for him and, he'd have to go to jail. Well, I used to talk to him like a human being all the time. So when he saw me come through and he knew, he didn't run from me. He literally was like, Mr. Jim, another one, I got to go back again. Yeah, and he'd let me put the handcuffs on him, didn't fight, didn't resist. We talked the whole way there. The guy would get out. He'd bust his butt to try to get caught up on that child support again. It's just an unfortunate situation for him, but he didn't run. He didn't fight. Right. It's all about building that trust and building that relationship.
Yeah, and I've had people from the uniform patrol days when we had murders down in certain areas. One time we actually arrested the wrong guy off eyewitness testimony, and another one, the people who I was cool with, and I'd arrest him for it, but I treat him professional. We were cool. Most of the people I arrested and take to jail, by the time I get done booking them, they tell me thank you. And we're shaking hands, right? I mean, you don't have to beat on everybody. But anyway, we got a call in from a guy that I arrested. And he said, hey, they used to call me the Wolf on the street. And he said, Wolf, you need to come down here. I need to talk to you. And so I went down and he said, hey, you got the wrong dude. He said, you need to go talk to this guy because he's been crying the whole time since it happened, et cetera. And he was right. Brought him in for a polygraph and got the confession. And we had to let the other guy go. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's good and bad in every profession, y'all. Young guys out there, I don't know how the hell you do it. The difference between what today and back then is everybody has a camera nowadays. And like Jim said, it's the videos that come out of the beatings and stuff like that. They're a lot of the time they're cut down and you don't get to see the whole thing that
you don't get to see the 5-6 minutes before.
I get called. I'm certified as an expert witness in federal court in law enforcement matters, and I've been called in on several of these national-wide cases where the police allegedly used too much force, et cetera. And if they don't have the whole video, they just want to show me the text. I won't even go. I don't care how much money they pay me. I want to see the whole thing. But it's an honorable profession, and you really have to have some balls to do it nowadays. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate the culture is the way that it is, but
good people try to do it
because the media portrays it that way.
Follow your dreams.
So you got any questions on there?
There's one here for you. Let's see. How did you end up on Courtney's case? Like someone told Courtney's mom about y'all.
Yeah, I had a friend through Facebook a couple of years ago, and she knew that I retired from law enforcement. And she knew about my career, and she's actually a family member of Courtney's, and she told Miss Stephanie about me a couple of years ago, and Miss Stephanie called and we talked about it. And I said, you know what? Next time I'm swinging through Alexandria, I'll stop by and read the case file or get the case file and read it. And that's when she went in and told Detective Isles that she was going to bring me in on the case, and they talked her out of it. And that's shortly thereafter the blood allegedly was retested, whatever. The second toxicology and all that comes out. But that's how a family friend, a relative of Courtney's and Stephanie's had reached out to me and told me about the case, and then she put me in touch with Miss Stephanie.
There's one for me. Jim, I want to know your biggest what the fuck moment on the streets, like when you questioned if your job was really worth it. Lumber, slumber. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, that's just one of those where you're like, what? Honestly, though, on the street, I've come across so many different things. I've had some people try to stab me. I've had a guy on a traffic stop go to pull a gun out of his sweater, which I didn't even realize that until after. So I made a traffic stop this one time, and there was a bunch of robberies that were going on at night at the convenience stores. Not in our area, but a little bit more west of us there in the Baton Rouge city limits. And I stopped this car. It came out of the bad area. And it was just one of those moments where you start talking to the driver, who was like, literally, the guy was like 6'6". And the hair in the back of your neck stands up because the radios weren't working too well at that point. Nobody was coming to back me up on that. And the conversation wasn't going well. I mean, I just knew it was going to go south very quickly, and the strength are in numbers. And sometimes in law enforcement, you feel like you can handle everything, but you got to be smart. And that was just one of those times where I just, that the traffic stop wasn't necessarily worth it. And so I gave him his information back and immediately tried calling other people to like, hey, come over here. We know something's with this. I just knew it. And so I rewound my tape that I had inside my car. And right at the time I was handing him his driver's license back, the passenger got out, literally pulled a gun out of his front sweater pocket, pulled it out, started coming down with it like this, saw that I was giving the driver's license back, pulled it back, stuffed it back into a sweater, and they took off to Baton Rouge, and they ended up being the robbery suspects. Yeah. To Baton Rouge, we called everybody out on that one, and they got caught and linked them to numerous robberies that were going on at night at convenience stores, and that's where they were headed. Yeah. So talk about an oh shit moment.
Right. Yeah, lots of those. Too many to remember, honestly. But y'all, back to Courtney's case real quick. We are way involved. Mm-hmm. I can't say anymore. And you better believe we're coming. And you better believe we're not putting in all this hard work and effort and time away from our families and everything else to give it up to somebody that's not going to take care of it. Okay. And that's all we can say about that. And when we do that, or if that's been done already or whatever, those people have to have time to do their due diligence and catch up and work it. And it's just the way that it is. So, but, keep the tips coming in, the calls, the support, share it outside the page. And, again, patron members, thank you so much. And
thank you very much.
Any supporters, I really love all y'all. And I think one of the things, I'm not going to go back in that. Patron is necessary, y'all. It's absolutely necessary to, not even defer a tenth of the cost for what we got going on. All right. But it certainly helps, and we appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much. Keep on sending in your information. Keep sharing Courtney's story. Keep doing everything that you're doing, but we love and appreciate all the support and the wonderful message we get. And, we're going to keep working our butts off. You can guarantee that. And we're going to find the answers. A lot of stuff's been uncovered at this point, and when I said it's an inferno right now from what it was just a few weeks ago. People are they're going to be feeling it real soon.
Yeah, for real. So, y'all, this is time for the podcaster talk, I guess. If you would please go to iTunes, leave us a review. Continue to like and share. Our real life, real crime friends, fans, and crew page has blown up. I've never seen anything like it.
Crazy.
800 new members yesterday or something, or I don't know how.
Crazy. Well, we love it. So let's keep it
going.
going.
Yeah, you love it. I'm doing the podcaster thing now. So I'm trying to say, y'all go to that page. You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't been to my regular Facebook page in like a month and a half because all I do is go check the crew page because that's where it's all at. Even the regular real life, real crime page, I think I may have been there once a month because I'm going to the crew page, and I try to answer every post that I can that y'all make or question that you answer, at least give you a thank you comment, et cetera. And I know Jim's doing the same thing. But y'all, that page has just a wealth of information, and our viewers and the Dream Team moderators. Oh my God. Y'all know we love you. But if you're not a member of the page, and I know a lot of you aren't, even the Patreon members, I've seen, a lot of them become patron, but they're not in the crew page. So I don't know how we can address that.
Link both of them up
to y'all
somehow.
about it now. Go check it out. We have stuff like Karen Ortolano, who's just like a research genius, posts something interesting about true crime every day. And then all the interaction with the crew members and the lifers and stuff. If you're not a member of the page, go join it and then ask other people to join it, because if you're not a member of the page, you're missing out. And then, of course, we have the Lanyap page, which it's in the hundreds now. And that's where lifers can go to post stuff that's not directly related to the cases. Like, we have everything from a cookbook going on to we swap beers and hot sauces, and Dave McKinnon is a lifer. He put,
it's hilarious.
He is fun. He posts some videos and stuff on there. Like last night, he put on Bad Boys, right? But there's a place for that, and I think that Dave understands it. And that's what the Lanyap page for. Lanyap is a Cajun word meaning something extra, free, or bonus. So anything all you lifers have that you want to do outside that's not true crime related, if you got something you make and you want to sell it or whatever, go put it on there. We don't care. That's your page too.
Absolutely.
But, you're a lifer, and we love you and we appreciate you. So just continue to like us and share us and support where you can, and continue to call the hotline. I don't have the number. I know it's on the website. But that's it. I guess we're going to wrap it up with this.
Yeah. Well, hey, we appreciate you very much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thank you for all the tips and all the information. Stay tuned. It's getting hot. It's getting hot.
But,
bring y'all some good info next week, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh man.
Some updates.
Love and appreciate each and every one of y'all. And I'm Woody Overton.
I'm Jim Rathman.
And
it's been a pleasure.
Next time or ever, don't let us catch you down on Murder Bayou. Peace.
Targeted. True crime, domestic violence. We tell stories of those who were targeted by domestic abuse and investigate cases of family violence, using academic research to interpret the events. As a college professor, I think we need to stop making family violence a secret. Let's use our stories to help, heal, and provoke change. Season 3 features the case of Josh Osborne, which is a story of abuse.
When he woke up, she was abusing him. When he went to sleep, she was abusing him. So his abuse was nonstop. It didn't matter what he did. Yeah. It was nonstop.
But it is also a story of hope. Targeted. True crime, domestic violence. Listen to us for free on all of your favorite podcatchers. Peace, my friends. Peace.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney prior to and during questioning. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. You understand your rights